Are you prepared? Well, you've got 2 pages of notes. I think you're prepared. Welcome back to Cartridge Race Radio. I'm Donald, once again joined by Brad.
Hello.
Brad, in the past we've talked about crime and the best way to deal with crime, which is to walk right and punch crime in the face.
Or in the stomach, if you're Mike Hagar. He's a real aficionado of the gut punch.
He's like, I'm wearing half the suspenders and I'm going to punch you in the stomach. Then we talked about Double Dragon, which is arguably one of the finest games ever crafted.
Yes.
But now we're going to talk about the Sega Genesis entry into the punch people in the face to fight crime, Streets of Rage.
Streets of Rage is a game that wants to be Final Fight so badly that you almost feel a little sorry for it. It's like Final Fight's little brother that just can't quite get the credit it deserves because it's just in the shadow of Final Fight, trying to do everything it does.
We also want to cover Streets of Rage 2 because they figured, hey, we missed the mark the first time, we should try again. And then they got a little bit closer. I mean, they're playing some good lawn darts with this franchise. And then there's a third game.
No, there isn't.
Strong air quotes around game. And maybe third, I don't know.
I played all the Streets of Rage games this weekend. I took extensive notes. I have nothing on the existence of a third game. I have a page of notes on one. I have a page of notes on... Oh, I do. I have one little sentence. Streets of Rage 3. This game exists, and it blows.
Well, back of the box quote right there.
Yeah, I think that actually was like what was on the box. It was just like big, Streets of Rage is back, but now it blows.
So Streets of Rage 1. We should start where the crime starts.
Yes.
You live in a city that claims that it's full of peace, but suddenly it's ruled by crime. We needed to figure out how a city who in the opening cinematic goes from, hey, this is a very peaceful city to, oh no, everything is crime.
Yeah, it seems like it was a really quick transition. To the point where when you're walking around in Streets of Rage, like, there's no bystanders, there's no citizens that are, being attacked or anything. In Final Fight, there's occasionally background characters that you don't beat up. But Streets of Rage, like, every single person that you come across is part of a criminal gang, and you beat the snot out of them.
Maybe everyone is in the Delo restaurant. There's signs in the background of Streets of Rage, and one of them is for a restaurant spelled L-D-O-H.
It's a Simpsons-themed French restaurant. Le Dough.
Yes, Lido. So are we establishing that Streets of Rage takes place in Paris?
Or possibly Springfield? Do they actually ever give the name of this fictional city?
The cinemas say the city.
Yeah, the city. So I've taken to just calling it Rage City, which sounds pretty great. But yeah, I don't think they ever really specify, even just give it like a fictional name. Like Final Fight had Metro City.
Streets of Rage is not good with their naming conventions. The guy you're after is Mr.X.
Yes.
People just think he's one of those pompous people who writes an X when he signs things. He's actually signing his last name.
Mr.X sounds like a generic bad guy wrestler that you would see, like, not on Monday Night Raw, not on, like, the premier wrestling show, but, like, the one that's on, like, Saturday afternoon on syndicated TV, where they just used, like, mid-card, middle-of-the-pack wrestlers against guys from whatever city they happen to be in wearing masks, and like Mr. X sounds like one of the generic wrestlers, which might explain why, like, in Streets of Rage 2, one of the characters you get to play as is a pro wrestler, as I think he's not even like trying to stop the crime. It's just like, that's my opponent, Mr. X, I'm gonna go fight him because we're both wrestlers, and that's what we do.
Following the convention of every beat-em-up we've played so far, this game is littered with pro wrestling lookalike characters, because apparently in Japan, they're like, when crime rules the city, pro wrestlers become gang bosses.
It's weird, too, because, like, the one most obvious, recognizable one, the boss of the third level, I think, in Streets of Rage 1, is the Ultimate Warrior. And he was always a good guy. Like, it's not like, oh, it makes sense that, like, the Ultimate Warrior would be running crime. Like, it makes no sense because he was always a good guy. You know, you'd think they get, like, Mr. Perfect or something to be running the street gang.
Maybe Streets of Rage was just predicting the future.
Maybe. I would like to know, you're a crime gang, and what are you doing with the Ultimate Warrior? Like, what's his role in your gang? He runs out and punches you, and then he runs back. Like, that's all he does in the game. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, like, if you're a street gang, like, what you do if the Ultimate Warrior joins, like, what job you give him.
I think he'd be in charge of, like, arm ribbons. Like, if you have a box of arm ribbons, that guy would know what to do with them.
Well, he's doing a terrible job because you don't see any of the other guys wearing arm ribbons.
Well, that's because he's got all the arm ribbons. So your gang doesn't look weird wearing arm ribbons. He shoulders that
just
burden.
One guy.
Yeah. And he's big. No one's going to say anything about it to him. Because he's the Ultimate Warrior. He will crush your face.
Yeah, he's like 7 feet tall and 300 pounds of muscle. I'm not going to tell him that arm ribbons look stupid.
So we probably should take it back a little bit here, because we're deep into the weeds, and we haven't even introduced our first 3 amazing characters you can pick from.
Yes. Now, according to the opening cinematic, these are young police officers who got fed up with all of the crime in the city. And then if you sit on the title screen for a while and it brings up each individual character's profile, they're ex-cops, so there's a little bit of a discrepancy between whether they're active on the police force or not. But I always say opening cinematic trumps character profile that nobody's going to see. So as far as I'm concerned, the canon is that they're police officers.
I took it as like the 80s cop movies. They went in one day and they're like, "Chief, we're tired of all this crime. We want to crack down on it." And he's like, "Axel, you're out of control." And he's like, "Here's my badge and gun," and throws it down. And then Blaze is like, "Sure." They all throw their badges down. They're like, "I guess we're ex-cops now, and we're not beholden to the law, and we can go punch crime in the face."
Now, I have an issue with their plan because it's not like these are criminals that are untouchable because, like, judges are corrupt or something, so they're always getting away with things. Like, the problem in this game is just that there's a lot of crime, and these 3 characters are sick of it, and it just seems like leaving the police force or, you know, taking things into your own hand makes your job of eliminating the crime harder. Like, if I was a cop and I wanted to reduce the crime in my city, I wouldn't stop being a cop.
And they didn't think this through. When you become an ex-cop and you start assaulting people on the street, you have become a criminal too, because it's illegal to just walk up and punch someone in the face.
Yeah, and it's not like when they were on the force, they're just being told, like, "Oh, well, ignore these criminals or don't punch them in the face." Like, you can do more of those things when you're on duty and active, you know. Like I said, there's some discrepancy between the opening cinematic and the character profiles of whether or not they are cops or not. But even if they are, they're not on duty at the, like, they're wearing their street clothes. They're just walking around punching people. There's no in the line of duty aspect to this.
So we got our characters. We got Axel, Blaze. Is it Alex?
Yes. No, it's Axel, Blaze, and Adam.
So they all have their different stats. Axel's the character that you're going to pick.
Yes, because the way the stats work is that there's 3 categories. Each character has 1 lower grade in a single category. So it goes speed, power, jumping. Axel has an A for speed, an A for power, and a B for jumping. And I'll tell you right now, jumping in this game is pointless.
Yes. And then Blaze is very fast. She can jump very high, as she can't punch very hard. And then Adam can punch very, very hard.
As hard as Axel, I would say. And he can jump as high as Blaze.
But he's very slow. And that's bad because when the enemies realize you want to punch them, they just back away from you really fast, and he can't catch anyone. He's just like, come on, guys, this isn't funny. And there's a scene later on where there's guys on motorbikes, and if you can't move fast out of the way, they will just run you over, and it hurts very bad.
Yes.
So everyone picks Axel because he's the guy on the front of all the art. He's the guy on the box. He's the guy they want you to pick. And you start punching crime in the face. I played a lot of Streets of Rage 2 when I was growing up because that's the one we had.
Okay. I played a lot of Streets of Rage 1 for pretty much the same reason that you played a lot of 2.
Streets of Rage 2 is a better looking game.
Yes, very obviously so.
The art got a big boost. So firing up Streets of Rage 1, I was like, what happened to the graphics? Why is this an NES game?
The first time that I played Streets of Rage 2, my reaction to pretty much everything was, oh, that's what that thing in Streets of Rage 1 was supposed to look like. Now I understand what they were going for. It wasn't a giant yellow turtle.
It's a leg of chicken. He wasn't eating a wallet. I mean, Axel might eat a wallet. Axel seems dumb. His hobby is video games and like weightlifting. It's like two circles that tend to not overlap.
Yeah, I think probably Axel's other hobby that they don't mention on that is weed.
And then there's Blaze, whose design was based around girl.
You know what, though? I mean, it changed a little bit for Streets of Rage 2. I'll give Streets of Rage 1 credit. Like, Blaze is not, like, super sexed up the way that women in games, even today, but especially then, are. Like, she's not wearing a bikini. She doesn't have, like, enormous breasts or anything like that. Like, she's a nice-looking woman who's wearing, like, a jacket and a skirt and, like, some, like, elf shoes for some reason.
That changed down the road in later installment. But yes, I'll give you, 1 did a good job of not falling into that trap. And Adam has the most yellow shirt on that you can have, to the point that it, like, doesn't blend with anything in the environment, and it stands out. Like, this dude can't do stealth missions at all.
Well, you know, to be fair, there isn't any aspect of Streets of Rage that screams stealth.
Yeah, that's true.
I think Adam probably dressed for the job at hand.
He didn't want to get hit by anything, so he wore, like, Hunter's orange levels of yellow. So, you hit the Streets of Rage city.
Yeah.
And after you punch a couple people, eat a few chickens out of garbage cans, you meet the first boss. And the first thing you're struck by is this dude has 2 shoulder joints. Like, they go down and then his arms come back up.
He's got, like, DeLorean doors for arms.
And you're like, I must kill this man to put him out of his horrible, horrible misery. But he runs around, and if you try to jump kick him, he does this, like, weird shadow step. But I was playing Adam, so I couldn't catch him on foot. Because he was like 3 times faster than Adam. He was designed to be fought by Axel. Let's be honest. Every character was designed to be fought by Axel. And Adam or Blaze was played by your younger sibling because your mom let them play Streets of Rage with you. That's what those 2 characters are for. So, you beat him up, and this brings me to my favorite thing in Streets of Rage. You're an ex-cop, or maybe you're still a cop. The game is unclear. You apparently still have friends on the force. And anytime you can call them, and it pans the camera over, and a cop car pulls up.
Not just any cop car, like a really sporty... It looks like a Ferrari or something. Like, they just pull up in this, like, awesome-looking car.
And then a guy leans out the passenger window with a bazooka, and he fires.
He launches a mortar exactly on your location.
And it hurts everyone but your character with a ring of fire. There's investigations when there's a police shooting. What kind of investigation is there for... You shot an RPG into a crowd of people.
Including one officer that seems like he was what you were aiming at.
Maybe he was an officer. We're unclear. And you can do this several times, such as in a factory.
Yeah, the car just drives right inside the factory.
On a boat.
It must have been a ferry. So that would actually be pretty awkward if you're like on a ferry and like the cop like drives up, shoots his bazooka at you, launches fire, and then like he's just on the boat that he like tried to blow up. He's just stuck on it till they get across the sound or whatever.
And they rolled up their windows, but people are mad at them, so they're rapping on the window. It's like, Doug, just be cool. Don't make eye contact. Just look at your phone. It's gonna be okay. Like, you blew up my Prius. I want to talk to you.
Getting back to the fact that they're driving this sporty 2-door car, think about how impractical that would be for like actual police work. Like if they arrested somebody, like with the normal cars, like they get the guy, they put him in the car, they put the hand on top of the guy's head so that they don't bash his brains in on the side of the car. Like, do you imagine like trying to get a criminal into the back of like a 2-door car and you're like, all right, let me move the seat up. All right, maybe if you put your leg in on that side first, and then it'd be like, you know what? We're just gonna let you go. Stop stabbing people, please. But yeah, it's just we're not gonna get like a handcuffed guy into the back of this 2-door car. It's just not gonna happen.
Well, what you get is super long handcuff chains, and then you put them on the roof, and you handcuff one, and then run it through the passenger's cabin to the other hand, and be like, okay.
I think it might be difficult to get that arranged. Like, I don't think the guy's gonna just go for that.
Well, in Rage City, the police just beat you with batons until you agree to do what they say. Or they do some sort of Street Fighter dragon uppercut, because Axel can do that. Is that Streets of Rage 2? Or?
That's Streets of Rage 2, yeah. That's what you get instead of the cop car. Streets of Rage 2 is in almost every way a better game, but you don't get like the cop car of bazooka fire death, which is a little bit of a letdown.
It's like, hey guys, we made better graphics, better gameplay, better audio. We're going to take out the cop car that everybody loved and give them a fire fist. Disappointing.
Very disappointing.
I don't know the officers' names in the car, but I wanted to believe they were Doug and Doug. And that's what they do. They drive Ferraris and shoot mortars.
Chief said this would be a waste of money, but who's laughing now?
It's a very specific, and they're not too far away. So if you think about it, if you look back, those guys are just slowly cruising behind everybody, waiting for their moment in the sun.
Like, Axel's just like going down the street, punching people, beating them up, and just behind him there's this Ferrari like creeping along, stopping every 30 feet to wait for him to finish beating guys up.
And if they're ex-cops and these guys are real cops, you think they'd be like, we probably should get out there and say something about this street violence that they're doing.
We keep firing warning mortars at him, but he won't stop punching people.
We don't want to deal with him. He's punching people really hard. It'll hurt. You go through a series of progressively odder levels.
Yeah, fighting the same 3 gang members over and over and over.
Yes, you got guy who wants to be person in radioactive jacket from Final Fight. You got guy who wants to be Doug or Bread from Final Fight.
Is that the guy who looks like John Connor's friend in T2? Like, he's got like the red mullet and the jean jacket, and it's just like, oh look, Danny Cooksey found more work. That's fantastic.
And then you got girl who wants to be the girls from Final Fight.
Yeah, whatever I said about them not like getting carried away with Blaze, completely the opposite with the Whip Woman. Like, it's just like Double Dragon, it was like a lady in workout clothes who just happened to have a whip. And then like Final Fight, they didn't have whips, but like they had like short shorts and high heels, and they were a little more risque. And then like Streets of Rage is just like, this woman's a sex worker. Here's her hooker boots and whip and bustier.
A whip on a pole.
Yeah, like that's like a Kentucky Derby whip.
Yeah, so everyone who wants to be someone from another game decides to come to... Maybe that's what happened. They left the cities from Double Dragon and Final Fight, and they're like, we're going to start our own city with our own rules. Rage City. At one point, you fight a man with a jetpack?
Yeah, a man with a jetpack who has this amazing, amazing technology And what is he using this technology for? He hangs out on a bridge, and if you try to walk across the bridge, he flies super low to the ground and punches you in the crotch.
Streets of Rage was like, hey, have you guys read the Billy Goat's Gruff? Because that story's real good, and we got to try to put that in this game.
But with a rocket pack.
And that fight is super annoying because you can only hit him when he gets low enough, but you're on this basic walk kind of weirdly up and down, and it's hard to tell when he's close to the ground.
You know, and a lot of beat-em-ups have this, where there's a little bit of plane of depth, you know, from like foreground, background. But they either didn't give him a shadow or they didn't do a real good job of it, because it's really hard to tell if he's like low to the ground or high off the ground but closer to the foreground than you are. And you drive yourself crazy, and you know, you can only hit him when he's low to the ground. You only have a brief window of time to figure out if that's what he's doing, because at the same time, if he is low to the ground, he's also rocketing at your crotch as hard as he can with his fist out. So, like, you got 2 seconds to, like, figure that out before you get punched in the dong.
It's like Johnny Knoxville found the Rocketeer's pack. The best way to kill him, though, is to make sure Doug and Doug are parked down the street, ready to shoot bazookas at the man who's flying. And after you beat him, no one's like, hey, we should probably take this jetpack and go punch people in the crotches ourselves.
There are levels in these games that are vertical levels, where instead of walking from left to right and punching people, you're going up or down an elevator punching people. And like the rocket pack would be super handy for that. But yeah, it doesn't happen.
We have to talk about the greatest innovation that Streets of Rage brought to this genre. On your way to the last boss, you're walking from left to right.
No. You're right, but we got our directions mixed up.
Oh, you're walking right to left.
Yes.
Yes, so you're walking from the opposite direction you usually walk. It actually is unsettling at first. So, like, what is happening here?
Yes. It's mind-blowing.
And they should punch you because they're walking from left to right.
The first thing I thought is I probably shouldn't punch these people because I'm in opposite land. I should probably hug them.
You are the bad guy in that scenario. But before you do that, you ride up an elevator on the outside of the building. Because apparently Mr.X was like, guys, we're installing an elevator outside the building because if you guys fall off, that's hilarious for Mr.X. I have to believe he talks in the third person.
I gotta think that, like, you go to this building that he's in and you go to the elevator and it's just like, cops use cargo elevator. And then you have to go around the side of the building and get on the cargo elevator. Yeah, you throw so many people off that building.
Just think of the horrific scene at the base of that building when actual cops show up to investigate what happened. So you fight your way through, walking the wrong way, and you meet Mr.X. And he's like, man, you killed just about everything. Would you like to be my right-hand man? And the game lets you pick yes or no. And I'm sure at that point most people pick no, so you can get into the final battle. I don't think I've ever picked yes.
I have.
And what happens?
Game over screen. Like, I think maybe trapdoor and you die and then game over screen.
So he Dr. Evils you.
Yeah. Now, this game is hard, and getting to Mr.X is an accomplishment. This isn't one of those games like, you know, you play now where you don't really have to try. You can put in like a half effort and still get through the game. Like Streets of Rage, you got to be paying attention. You got to be trying. You can't half-ass it. You got to really concentrate and play well. And it's a beatable game, but it takes effort. And to put in all that effort, get to the final boss, and then like pick the wrong choice and just get a game over, that sucks.
Yeah, that could break younger versions of us pretty bad. But back then it's like, I'm going to beat you up, Mr. X, because I'm the hero. And Mr. X has a friend. His name is Jeff. He lives in Double Dragon World. And he's like, man, when these guys come for you, you know what you got to do? You got to get a gun. Because nobody has guns. But if you have a gun, you win. And this is the only time in the game where the jump matters. Because Mr. X is very bad at aiming, so he just sprays and prays. and you can jump over it, and Mr. X will shoot his own guys that came in the room to fight alongside him. So Mr. X isn't a very good boss.
No.
As far as unsatisfying endings go in video games, Streets of Rage is really high up there because it just shows you this crappy image of the three characters standing around Mr. X's body. It's like, you saved the day. Credits.
You know, it's a little darker than most video game endings because, like, there's nothing like after you beat him and knocked him unconscious, he went to jail and his empire. It's just like, you beat this man to death with your fists, and now crime is over because you just, like, punched this guy until he died, and now all three of you are standing around the body like, was this worth it?
Except you didn't kill him.
That's true.
Mr. X is back again. You stopped crime. Like, all the criminals got a message on their beeper to go to the nearest payphone, and hopefully you haven't beat up all the payphone for the chicken inside. They just get a call and it's like, hey guys, crime's canceled. Mr. X got beat up. He's got to go away for a couple years. And then he gets out of jail, and the first thing he's like, man, that Streets of Rage team, I got to get him. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kidnap one of their members. That will show them. So he kidnaps Adam.
Yes.
And Blaze and X are like, oh no, what should we do? Let's get Adam's tween brother, who is a rollerblade enthusiast, to join our team.
And this kid does not take off his rollerblades to go fight adults. He's all about the rollerblade foo because it's like 1993, and of course you're going to wear rollerblades while you punch criminals.
You know how easy it would be to beat somebody up who's wearing rollerblades?
Especially if they're like 150 pounds lighter than you. And how much fighting experience could a 12-year-old have? At most, 12 years. These are like hardened criminals.
So let's assume he was born in Rage City.
Yeah.
Since he was born, he's been in fistfights. His mother was like, clean your room. No, and then they just have a fist fight, and whoever wins is the right in this situation.
Yeah, but I mean, these criminals could have moved to Rage City when they were in their early 20s, and they'd still just, by the fact of 12 years old is not very old, they would have had more fighting experience than this kid.
It's true, but rollerblades, Brad, they make you a better fighter. Unless you get to an escalator, then you're screwed.
Take it from somebody who has played hockey before. Fighting on skates is hard. It's harder than just fighting.
Your footing's really, really degraded a whole lot.
Yeah, and it's kind of a big part of fighting well.
And if you're on an incline, that makes it harder.
Yeah.
They're like, but we need to round out this team. What we need is a pro wrestler
who's named Max,
who's totally not Andre the Giant, because we don't want to get sued. So you get a pro wrestler. And you can do some trickery throughout the game. And if you want to be a kangaroo, you can be a kangaroo.
I did not be a kangaroo.
You know the kangaroo fight in the game?
Yeah.
If you beat the kangaroo's trainer up without killing the kangaroo, if you die and continue, you can select the kangaroo.
Well, that is pretty great.
Much like every other game in this genre, you have a factory level.
Yes.
And beat up the only people who seem to be producing anything in the city. But this factory is awesome. Like, this is the most awesome factory in one of these games, because you can bait the enemies into walking under these giant hydraulic presses.
Yeah.
And getting slammed to death. And they'll just keep doing it over and over. And none of them like, hey, Jeff, I don't think this is working. We probably should just wait on this side of the hydraulic press.
Sega liked the factory levels so much that they put one in both Streets of Rage 1 and Streets of Rage 2. But my favorite thing about the factory in Streets of Rage 1 is that the boss of the factory is also like the boss of a previous level. And I kind of feel like this might just be his day job. So like you go and you beat him up, and then like the next day he's just at work and you just show up at his workplace and like, oh, what a coincidence. Now I get to beat you up again. Like this poor guy just can't catch a break. It's just constantly being beat up by rogue cops.
I can't fight at work, I'll get fired. Got a house payment. So some of these bosses in this game are highly annoying.
Also improbable, I guess is the word I would go with.
There's one man who runs around shooting fire out of his face.
Yeah.
The problem with playing Streets of Rage 1, 2, and a rumored third one in 1 week is they kind of blend together.
Well, yeah, definitely. Although I will say there's one guy who stands out in particular. The boss in Streets of Rage 1 who fights using a boomerang.
Yeah, he's the disjointed arm guy, isn't he?
Yeah. That's commitment. This is a guy who had a boomerang at one point, and he joined the gang, and they're just like, all right, you're a boomerang guy. And, like, now he just has to, like, fight with a boomerang all the time, regardless of whether it makes any sense. He spends half the boss fight, like, holding his hand out, waiting for his boomerang to come back, and then you just, like, punch him.
I want to believe that he didn't come into the gang as boomerang guy. They were just ransacking like a sporting goods store, and he picked up, he's like, hey guys, look, a boomerang. They're like, okay, you're the boomerang man now. I don't know how to use a boomerang.
We better learn.
Streets of Rage 2 has my favorite boss of the entire series in it. You go to a baseball stadium where there's signs up that say, do baseball all over.
And not just, I mean, they definitely say that, but it's like, do, exclamation point, base, ball. Like, it's two different, baseball is 2 words on these signs. Those are right next to the signs that say, it's like boo. Oh, what? What's like boo? What does that even mean? And then when you get inside the stadium where they have like the advertisements like around where the upper deck starts and there's all the out of town scoreboards and ads, half the ads just say audio. So like this baseball stadium is sponsored by just the general concept of audio.
Some guy's trying to troubleshoot the audio system to tell everyone to stop fighting on the field. He's like, crap, what is going on? It just says audio on the screen.
This advertisement is brought to you by the National Council for Audio, reminding you that sound is pretty cool.
You get into a fight on the pitcher's mound, and it's a guy dressed in baseball clothes, but he does not look like he's in physical shape to be a pitcher. Now, you know about sports, Brad.
Little bit.
More about sports than me.
Yeah.
How many baseball fields in America or Canada or Japan have a gigantic elevator directly below the pitcher's mound?
Well, I mean, we'll never know for sure because I'm assuming that would be a secret thing. I would guess probably not a lot. It seems like it would be very expensive.
Okay, so this field, after you beat the boss, you go lowering down into the depths of the field. And now I have a question about elevators for you.
Sure.
How far can an elevator drop before it's lethal to jump down onto it?
You know, I mean, an elevator is just like jumping into anything. After however many feet would kill you if you jumped off a building, that's how many feet it would take to kill you if you like jumped down an elevator shaft and landed on the elevator.
So let's say after the first 12 feet.
Yeah. After that, we're talking serious injuries.
So this game should, by the end of that level, and this would be really funny, that you just arrive at the bottom floor with a bunch of bodies because people were trying to jump down and kill you, and just first breaking their legs and being like, oh, help me. And then just other people falling down and just instantly dying. And Blaze is just standing there like, this is weird, guys. Why are you doing this? Are there people up above like shoving other people? Like, go fight them. Shove.
I think maybe they finally got that audio system working. They started playing It's Raining Men. And lo and behold, it started raining men.
Guys, we gotta do what the song says. It's prophetic. Yeah, that's my favorite boss. But Streets of Rage 2 gets weird. You go to Disneyland. But not official Disneyland. You go into hella knockoff Disneyland.
What? Why? If you're on like a beating up crime spree and you're just like going past Disneyland and you're like, I bet there's criminals in there and they sure need a punchin'. The factory level, I think... No, the stadium level comes next. It's not like the only way to get into the stadium is through Disneyland.
But not just through Disneyland. You go into Disneyland. I imagine Axel is so dumb and stoned, he'd be like, it is a small world after all. I'm like, what does that even mean? You're an idiot. But you go into a ride called Pirates.
Yeah, like you're going through the theme park punching people for some reason, and then you're just like, oh, hey, a ride. I want to go on that.
So it's supposed to be Pirates of the Caribbean. But there's no pirates like in the background. It's a wooden hallway.
Yeah.
And they're like, ooh, it must be a spooky pirate boat with our standard 4 people that you fight through this entire game.
And then you go up some stairs and you're on the deck of the pirate ship. And it actually does look a little bit like a ship. And there's ninjas. There's no pirates. There's ninjas.
It's not Ninjas of the Caribbean.
Yeah. This is, 2 decades before, like, Pirates versus Ninjas was a meme. This is just like, they're like, well, what should we put on this pirate boat? We don't have any pirate sprites.
And I found it very upsetting since we have so in-depth in the past talked about proper pirating games. No one challenged me with a cutlass to have a fight where I stab them in the face and stomach. Oh, that brings me to another thing. You know about sports, Brad.
Yes.
When you hold a baseball bat, do you hold it so that your fists that are gripping the handle are parallel to just above your ear? Because that's how these people do it.
Different baseball players have different batting stances, and it's kind of whatever they're comfortable with. And people hold their hands at different heights. But I gotta think that, if nothing else, the way that the enemies in Streets of Rage hold baseball bats probably isn't the best way to hold a bat for fighting purposes.
No. I'd want it covering, like, my torso so I could use it to deflect things. They fully expose their legs, torsos, basically neck, to hold this bat up where one of your arms would actually be covering your eyes the way they hold it. So I don't know who this is supposed to scare. It's like, hey guys, you can't see anymore. Let's punch him in the crotch. And Rocket Guy's like, on it! And they do it with, like, rain gutters that you can pick up, or I think it was a metal pipe, and katana blades.
And knives. You'll just walk around, like, holding a knife, like, next to your ear, like you're talking on the phone, but the knife is a phone. I don't know if you're trying to, try to disguise it. Like, oh, they'll think I'm on the phone, but it's actually a knife, and then I'll stab them. But you look ridiculous.
Maybe Rage City is so hard that AT&T had to start gluing knife blades to their iPhones. Stop a mugging, and then make a call to 911. So Streets of Rage 1 and 2, they're not terrible games.
I really like the series overall. I'm a little bit partial to 1 over 2, which is dumb. Because going through the list of pros and cons, 2 is clearly the better game. I think 1 is maybe a little nostalgia for me. Plus, I think the music is significantly better in the first one, and you get the mortar cops in the Ferrari. So, but they're both pretty good games.
Which brings us to our point of the other Streets of Rage property, which I've never beat. Streets of Rage 3 opens up where there is an old robot man telling Axel that the city is being invaded by robots.
It's the weirdest thing.
They looked at Streets of Rage and they're like, okay, we got a fast fighter. It's got a really great flow to it. The levels aren't too long. They're not too short. It's fun to progress through. And they're like, the levels need to be longer. The enemies need to have larger health bars than you yourself have. And we gotta slow this all down. And also, Axel's wearing Adam's shirt from Streets of Rage 1.
It's a tribute.
Is he still kidnapped in that one?
So Adam gets rescued and he goes back home to live with Skate, his brother. And then one day Skate comes home and the house is trashed and Adam's gone. And I don't think they left a note or anything. So he just decides he must have been kidnapped again, not maybe his kidnapping experience has scarred him and now he has alcohol problems and, got trashed and wrecked the house and then ran off somewhere. There's also a bombing spree going on at the same time.
Okay, I have a serious question here.
Yeah.
After Streets of Rage 1, was Adam actually the puppet master for the crime in the city?
It's possible.
He got quote-unquote kidnapped and then rescued at the end, and then at 3 he got kidnapped again, and the crime started back up.
Could it be that Streets of Rage 1 is actually like Adam recruiting his friends to take out the crime boss of the city so that he can become the crime boss of the city, and then he just conveniently disappears, and, you know, like they find a guy who kind of looks like Mr. X to be like the face of the organization, but it's actually Adam?
Whoa. I think we just blew Streets of Rage wide open.
Yes. Streets of Rage is the story of a young cop recruiting his allies to become the head of crime, unbeknownst to his friends.
They didn't even see it coming. And even after it happened, they're like, we saved you. And he's like, yeah, thanks for saving me, guys. You're real friends. In this one, you get the addition of a old man who's part robot.
Yeah, like that's a character people were demanding. They're like, yeah, Axel and Blaze are pretty cool, but what I really want to be is a kung fu robot that looks like an old man.
He looks like the guy who trains the bride in Kill Bill.
Except lame.
Yeah. And Streets of Rage 3 sucks. We agree.
Yes.
Blaze in Streets of Rage 3. Why is she always facing left? They did not draw an animation for her body facing to the right. Her head moves left and right, so if you're walking, she'll look which way she's going, but her back is always to the right of the screen.
It's just how committed she is to, like, going through the game correctly.
She is walking backwards like Alucard slides through a castle. And no one's like, hey, Blaze, you could walk forward. And then, you know, legs are designed to walk that way. You're shuffling weirdly backwards. She's like, it's okay, I got it. I have developed a weird phobia of walking forward.
I think probably after the first 2 times that you beat up every single person in the city, like by the third, you're just kind of bored and you're like, all right, let's mix it up. I'm going to try to do all this backwards.
She's like, oh, that Michael Jackson game was built with the Streets of Rage engine. I'm going to try moonwalking. I made it to the second level, and then I thought, why am I playing this when I could play Streets of Rage 1 or 2 and have Ferrari grenade cops or burning hands? Why in Japan did they have a cooler name for this game than we did?
What was it called again?
Burning Knuckle.
That is pretty great. It actually just sounds more like a arthritis symptom, actually, now that I think about it. It's like, which I guess would be appropriate for, like, the old robot guy, but, you know, it's like, oh, what's your power? Oh, my knuckles hurt. I feel kind of like they're burning.
Burning Knuckles takes place long after Streets of Rage when they're all in the retirement home, just, like, lightly punching each other. Like, ow, ow.
This podcast being what it is, and our favorite topic needs to come up again. I want to talk about the geography of Streets of Rage 1.
Yes! What geography?
Because your path through this game starts on the streets of Rage, and that's stage 1. And then stage 2 is like an alley, like, I guess, behind the street of Rage. And that takes you to the beach. So it's like you're going down the street, and then you cut through an alley, and you're on the beach for some reason. And from the beach, you cross a bridge. But it never actually shows you get all the way across the bridge. You're just on a bridge, and then you fight a fat guy, and then you're done with the bridge. And the next level, you're on a boat. So, like, did you walk all the way across the bridge, and then you're taking the boat back? Or you get, like, halfway through the bridge, and they're like, oh, we forgot to finish the bridge, so you have to take this boat. For whatever reason, you go from the bridge to the boat, and from the boat to the factory. So, is the factory on an island? From the factory, it's Mr. X's hotel that he lives in. So, like, you just cross a bridge, hop a ferry, go to this island that's, like, just a factory and, like, a fancy hotel where the crime boss lives.
Okay, I've got it.
All right.
Are you prepared?
Probably not.
Mr. X lives in the hotel.
Yes.
That's attached to the factory.
Right.
And the factory is where they produce crime.
Okay.
No, follow me here. They produce crime in the factory. And then they load the crime up on the boat. And the city, trying to stop the crime, blew the bridge up. So that's when Mr. X had to get a boat. So he ships the crime via boat to the bridge. And then people have to walk to the streets of Rage to do the crime.
I see. So you're going backwards through the shipping route to find the source of the crime.
Yes, you are punching the crime in the face and gut until you get to the source of the crime, which is a very nice hotel built on top of a factory.
As all nice hotels are.
Yes. And as wonky as that geography is, 2, I can't even piece together some sort of bowl to explain that one.
The first level of Streets of Rage 2, you start on the Streets of Rage, and then you go into a restaurant and you just trash the restaurant. And, like, you go outside, and I'm pretty sure it's like the owner of the restaurant is like, dude, you just trashed my place, and now we have to fight.
And he is ripped.
Yeah.
He, like, takes off his shirt, and he's got, like, this mustachio and just, like, 9 sets of abs. And then you go to Disneyland, and then, yeah, the baseball stadium.
With the underground laboratory.
And you're at one point in a spaceship of some sort fighting a head on a tentacle.
Yes. I think that's one of the rides at the theme park.
Man, Disneyland's changed since I was there last. Do you want to go on to the set of bad sci-fi movie? I thought it was at Disneyland, not Universal Studio. Streets of Rage 3 starts on the docks of Rage. They couldn't even get that right. Like, okay, what's the name of our game? Streets of Rage. Where should we start the game? On a dock.
You know, honestly, instead of, like, just numbering these sequels, they should have had each one have a different theme. And it could be, like, Streets of Rage, and then the next one would be Docks of Rage, and then you'd have, like, Countryside of Rage, where, like, you're on a farm and horses punch you.
Bodega of Rage, where you're just trying to get your drink and go.
Farmer's Market of Rage.
It should have been Streets of Rage, and then Streets of Rager.
Oh.
Ragier.
And Streets of Rageist.
Streets of the Most Rage. Yeah, Streets of Rage 1 and 2. It's a great duo of games. It's unfortunate they never made a third game. It could have probably been pretty good. It chased Final Fight almost to its detriment, I would say. Instead of trying to be its own thing, it was like, we can do this, guys. We can do it. It's its own thing. There are no cops and Ferraris in Final Fight.
No, there are not. Much to that game's detriment.
And the whole time you're secretly fighting Adam or helping Adam. Hey, did you want to tell the viewers about Streets of Rage? Now that we're at the end? Like, when it came out and stuff?
Sure. Streets of Rage is a first-party game. So, published by Sega. I don't know who the developer was. They didn't really, make a big deal about that back in 1991. First game came out in 91. Second game came out in 92. And then the third game allegedly came out in 1994. You know, assuming that the third game actually exists, which it does not. Yeah, it was beat 'em up, similar to Final Fight, which it so badly wants to be. And yeah, that's Streets of Rage.
Now that you told us, do you have any closing thoughts on Streets of Rage?
I really like Streets of Rage. I go back and play it, every so often. It's the kind of game that's not that hard to pick up and play. I think the soundtrack to the first one's phenomenal. I recommend that you check out Streets of Rage if you haven't played it.
Also, great box art on Streets of Rage 1 and 2.
Yes.
That's like some iconic box art. You can wear that on a t-shirt and people would be like, man, you're a nerd.
I actually have a Streets of Rage t-shirt now. I think you're just, this whole thing was just an excuse to call me a nerd.
It was. That's going to do it for Streets of Rage. If you want to get a hold of us, all that info's in the show notes. We now have a YouTube channel in case you want to watch a still image and listen to this audio. It's great if we accidentally say something funny. You can share it from that moment with your friends. Be like, you got to listen to this stuff. It's great.
I went through the whole 45-minute show and found the one funny part and bookmarked it for you guys.
If you turn on the closed captions, it auto-generates them for us, and sometimes you get hilarious mistakes in the auto-generation thing, because apparently we don't enunciate perfectly, Brad.
Whatever do you mean?
It doesn't understand when we talked about owls. So, you can go visit that. Whatever. Up to you. But yeah, like I said, that's going to do it for Streets of Rage. I am Donald. And that was Brad, and we will see you next week.
This is really sad. I have trouble like quickly knowing right from left, and the way that I remember it is Spy Hunter. The van parks on the right side of the road, and you turn into a boat on the left side of the road. So anytime I need to figure it out,